Good morning, Bitcoin. Welcome to the Thomas Hunt Show. Today is Wednesday, August 26th, 2020. My name is Thomas Hunt, and this is the World Crypto Network. The Second Coming by William Butler Yeats. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of a passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it real shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle, and what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. I didn't really want to talk about the Republican National Convention, Day 2, but this video by Claire McCaskill, former senator, inspired me, and I felt I had to live up to her example. Here's Claire McCaskill on MSNBC.
I have to take a deep breath here because I'm hopping mad. I'm just furious. I am furious at this little small man trashing the people's house with his narcissism and his ego, using those people that were becoming American citizens as props. And by the way, he's the most anti-immigrant president in the history of our country. I hope journalists are busy right now because I guarantee you there's somebody in that group that would not be allowed in this country under this president's policies. You know, it is just infuriating that he has blown up the Hatch Act like this, and that all these people think these rules don't apply to them. Who do they think they are? It is just infuriating. And by the way, Melania Trump, let me give her credit. She at least said for the first time anybody in this White House has ever said how badly she feels for the families who have lost a loved one to COVID. But let's be real about whether or not she's really going to help him with women in the suburbs. They know what the deal is here. They've all defended husbands publicly. This is a woman whose husband had to pay court costs this week because he paid off a porn star because he was having sex behind her back with a porn star right after she gave birth to their son. Give me a break. I am done with this guy. Oh, sorry.
A powerful message there by former Senator Claire McCaskill. That's interesting. Reminder, in 2013, the Trump Foundation gave $25,000 to Pam Bondi's campaign for re-election as Attorney General. A month later, Bondi announced that Florida would not join other states suing Trump for fraud over Trump University, even though many alleged victims lived in Florida. Jill Wine-Banks, former Watergate prosecutor. No president or his family has ever benefited more personally from his office than Trump. Everything Bondi said about Biden has no basis in fact, but 100% applies to Trump and his children. Justin Baragona. I love that Pam Bondi's speech decrying nepotism and cronyism comes moments before Tiffany Trump takes the stage. Pam Bondi on Biden, but when you look at his 47-year career in politics, the people who have benefited are his family members, not the American people. Meanwhile, Tiffany Trump. David Korn. Tiffany Trump says that she can relate to people out of work. She's obviously inherited the no self-awareness gene. Well, one thing I learned from the RNC is that Tiffany Trump is an irredeemable liar. Larry Kudlow is out here making up stuff. This didn't happen. Let's listen to Larry Kudlow, former commentator on Fox News, now lying for the president.
Once in 100-year pandemic, it was awful. Health and economic impacts were tragic. Hardship and heartbreak were everywhere. But presidential...
Note the past tense. More than 1,000 people died today of COVID in the United States of America. More than 1,000 people died yesterday. The infection is spreading. It is not over. It is not past tense.
Leadership came swiftly and effectively with an extraordinary rescue for health and safety to successfully fight the COVID virus. Once in 100-year pandemic, it was awful. Health and economic impacts were tragic.
Were tragic and are still tragic. People are still dying from the coronavirus. 1,000 in the United States, 2 in Italy, 4 in the Netherlands, 1,000 in the United States every day. Jill Wine-Banks again. Kudlow fact check. Everything he said is false. No booms. Stock market not booming. 30 million unemployed. Robert Reich, former economic advisor to Bill Clinton. It is hard to type fast enough to respond to the economic lies at the RNC tonight. The fact is, jobs grew faster in the last 3 years of Obama than during the first 3 of Trump. And the 4th year of Trump has been a jobs disaster because he let COVID get out of control. Brent Spiner, Data on Star Trek. I want to run for president just so there'll be a convention where everyone lies about how great I am. Of course, Data's actually pretty great. LeVar Burton responds to Data saying, Brent Spiner is the kindest, warmest, bravest, most wonderful human being I've ever known in my life. And even now I feel this way this minute. And yet, somewhere in the back of my mind, something tells me it's not true. Brent Spiner says, nonetheless, I'm touched. There was one of the early speakers who mentioned that the computer was invented in Iowa. So I had to look this up and fact check it. It's an interesting story. It could go either way. The Atonsoff Berry computer was invented in Iowa. The ABC's priority is debated among historians of computer technology because it was neither programmable nor Turing complete, unlike the widely famous ENIAC machine of 1947, in part derived from the ABC computer. It was designed only to solve systems of linear equations and was successfully tested in 1942. However, its intermediate result storage mechanism, a paper card reader/writer, was not perfected, and when Atonsoff left Iowa State College for World War II, work on the machine was stopped. So interesting side note, they mentioned the Atonsoff Berry computer. All this information is from Wikipedia. You can see a replica of the computer right here from the Durham Center at Iowa State University. So it does seem a very famous computer, however, not programmable, not Turing complete, was indeed invented in Iowa. Nicole Wallace, MSNBC. America is ill-equipped to respond to the level of grift on display by the Trump family. And that's the great thing about lying, right? If you just stack the lies on top of each other, if you're willing to go all the way and lie that much, either everything you say is false, or it's going to take a lot of work to unpack it all. Just keep lying, I guess. Eric Trump said, Biden has pledged to defund the police. As Jill Wine-Banks say, this is a lie. This is patently untrue. Apparently you can just make political speeches and say anything you want now. It's pretty crazy. I don't think I'd be able to do it. If I was, Eric Trump in this position, so on and so forth, had to give a speech, had to support your father, I don't think I'd just outright lie about his opponent. It just doesn't seem right. Here's Eric Trump's speech, but just my father.
Every day, my father. My father. I'd like to speak directly to my father. I miss you every single day. Dad, I love you. My father, under my father's leadership, it will send Americans to Mars. Only my father. Every day, my father.
As Aaron Rupar said, if you took a drink every time Eric Trump said my father, you would be dead of alcohol poisoning by now. Judd Apatow reminds us of the time on Howard Stern's show when Trump was bragging that he never changed one diaper. That is a man who doesn't want to touch his children. Can you imagine how starved they must have been for healthy interaction with him? All of their speeches are a cry for help and love. As Ruth Marcus said, not a syllable from any of Trump's children, last night or tonight, about their father as a father or a human being. What a contrast with Biden's family. The Lincoln Project is reminding us that there were so many crimes committed last night, and we still have 2 more nights to go. Let's check out this short video from the Lincoln Project.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
I'm Mike Pompeo. I'm speaking to you from beautiful Jerusalem, looking out over the old city.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the First Lady of the United States, Mrs. Melania Trump.
As the Lincoln Project so dramatically has shown there were multiple violations of the Hatch Act last night. As Jill Wine-Banks says, the Army is investigating the 2 soldiers who appeared in uniform as part of the Samoan delegation roll call. Will the Marines investigate the 2 who opened the door for Trump, the ones who did for Melania, or the ones who played the trumpet? Walter Schaub reminds us that the Hatch Act was the wall standing between the government's might and the candidates. Tonight, a candidate tore down that wall and wielded power for his own campaign. Citizen Trump is no longer presenting himself as a candidate. Now, your government is telling you who should rule you. Schaub continues, it happened on Henry Kerner's watch. With ample advance warning, he chose not to use the bully pulpit of his office at the United States OSC to object to this travesty or arm the people with detailed information about what was prohibited. Instead, the wall fell without so much as a whimper. Kerner's office sent a short response to Congress that talked only in general terms about the Hatch Act's application to the White House and incorrectly stated that the president is not covered by any section of the Hatch Act. That's not what was called for in this urgent moment. Trump is covered by a criminal section of the Hatch Act that bars him from commanding any employee to engage in political activity, including working on behalf of any candidate. So Kerner's letter was simply incorrect. Richard W. Painter, former U.S. attorney, writes, "This is a violation of the Hatch Act, which prohibits use of official position to support a partisan political campaign. Secretary Pompeo was on an official diplomatic mission. He should be fired for this. So should his boss." As Andrea Mitchell said, Pompeo is the first Secretary of State in at least 75 years to break tradition, State Department regulations, and possibly the law in speaking at a political convention in a speech taped against a backdrop of the historic old city of Jerusalem. A House subcommittee announced It is investigating. Jake Tapper is not messing
Great nation,
around.
the United States of America.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo destroying another norm by being a sitting Secretary of State, speaking at a political convention from a foreign country. And now,
Great nation.
Destroying another norm. Why is it a norm? Well, the taxpayers paid to send him there. He's on an official mission. The taxpayers paid for his hotel rooms. He's on an official mission. The taxpayers paid for his security. He's on an official mission. All of these things were just used to promote the president. It's an obvious violation. It's almost as if they think there'll be no laws soon, or they'll all be pardoned and nothing matters. Shout out to Christopher Bouzet. He made this little clip here. Looks like Trump has also plagiarized someone else's entrance. Let's see what Trump's entrance last night looked like. Oh yeah, that is kind of similar. Look at that. Yeah. Almost shot for shot. Pretty sad how jealous he must be of Vladimir Putin. And finally, we had the most emotion we've seen from this administration yet, as Yamiche Alcindor writes. First Lady Melania Trump on COVID-19's drastic impact on the United States. My deepest sympathy goes out to everyone who's lost a loved one. My prayers are with those who are ill or suffering. I know many people are anxious, and some people feel helpless. I want you to know you are not alone. Which is a great message, and the only time this administration has ever spoken emotionally about the losses of COVID-19. Of course, NBC News now confirms that coronavirus cases linked to the Sturgis motorcycle rally have been confirmed in South Dakota and at least 7 other states. They laughed and joked. They didn't wear masks. They gathered together, and now they've brought the virus back home with them. More than 100 cases have been found in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Montana, Wyoming, Washington, South and North Dakota. And there were very few masks or social distancing in the Rose Garden last night. They put a little bit of space in between the chairs, but no one wore a mask. You'd think they would all be tested, but as it turns out, coronavirus tests were not required for Rose Garden attendees last night. When they asked the campaign, they said protocols recommended by a coronavirus advisor were followed. Melania's chief of staff told Kate Bennett that the guests seated in the rows near Trump and Pence were tested, but most were not. It's interesting how obvious it is that they're protecting themselves and not you. The people who sat near the president and the vice president, of course, were tested. What about the people who sat next to these people at the bar at Sturgis? What about the people forced to get on the bus and go back to work? What about the children in the classrooms? They're not tested. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Robert Frost, Fire and Ice. And one more time, Claire McCaskill, throwing it down, speaking the truth about last night's atrocious Republican National Convention. Senator Claire McCaskill.
I have to take a deep breath here because I'm hopping mad. I'm just furious. I am furious at this little small man trashing the people's house with his narcissism and his ego, using those people that were becoming American citizens as props. And by the way, he's the most anti-immigrant president in the history of our country. I hope journalists are busy right now, because I guarantee you there's somebody in that group that would not be allowed in this country under this president's policies. You know, it is just infuriating that he has blown up the Hatch Act like this, and that all these people think these rules don't apply to them. Who do they think they are? It is just infuriating. And by the way, Melania Trump, let me give her credit. She at least said, for the first time anybody in this White House has ever said, how badly she feels for the families who have lost a loved one to COVID. But let's be real about whether or not she's really going to help him with women in the suburbs. They know what the deal is here. They've all defended husbands publicly. This is a woman whose husband had to pay court costs this week because he paid off a porn star because he was having sex behind her back with a porn star right after she gave birth to their son. Give me a break. I am done with this guy. Oh, sorry.
Who do these people think they are? That there are no rules? Claire McCaskill, former senator. Thank you, Senator. And thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and a share. Subscribe down below. Follow at Mad Bitcoins on Twitter, or follow at World Crypto Net to make sure you get updates about our upcoming shows. Until next time, bye-bye.